The last time anyone saw Maya Millete alive was January 7th, 2021. She was 39 years old. She was a mother of 3. She was described by her family as miniature, but fierce, with a bold personality and full of life. She had plans for her daughter's birthday trip to Big Bear, plans to file for divorce from her husband of more than 20 years. She called a divorce attorney that day. The attorney saw red flags immediately, in the marriage, in the urgency with which Maya was seeking help, and asked her to come in the next morning. She never came in the next morning. She never showed up for her daughter's birthday trip. She stopped responding to the family group chat. She was never seen again. Her body has never been found. But today, 5 years, 4 months, and 11 days after Maya Millete disappeared from her home in Chula Vista, California, a jury of 12 people walked into a courtroom, and Larry Millete stood trial for her murder. This is Forensic Disconnect. And today, we are covering the opening of one of the most significant no-body murder trials in recent American history. A case built entirely on circumstantial evidence, with no confirmed cause of death, no body, and a defendant who has maintained from day one that his wife left voluntarily. A defendant who, according to prosecutors, paid spellcasters to keep his wife from leaving him. Who planted a cell phone in her car to track her whereabouts. Who drove 400 to 600 miles the morning after she disappeared with his phone off for nearly 12 hours. Whose neighbor's camera captured loud bangs the night prosecutors believe Maya was killed. Whose backyard caught fire 4 months after Maya disappeared, with her burnt credit card found in the ashes. For divorce, Larry Millete allegedly decided was not an option. For him, prosecutors said in opening statements today he would rather kill her than let her leave. Before we go further, subscribe and hit the notification bell. This trial is going to last 3 months. We are going to cover every significant development. Subscribe so you are here for all of it. Let me tell you who Maya Millete was. Because in a case that is entirely about what happened to her, she deserves to be known before we get into what the prosecution and defense are arguing. Maya Millete, also called May by people who knew her, was 39 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was born in the Philippines and came to the United States as part of a family that settled in Hawaii. That is where she met Larry. They married young. They had 3 children together. Children who are now 10, 15, and 17 years old, who have been in the custody of Maya's sister Maricris since August 2024, who have been growing up for 5 years without their mother, while their father sits in a Chula Vista jail accused of killing her. Maya worked for the United States Navy as a civilian employee. She and Larry both did. The specific detail of their shared workplace, and Maya's alleged affair with a married coworker at the Navy, which the defense tried and failed to use to introduce an alternative suspect theory, is part of the backdrop of the marriage in its final year. She was, by every account from the people who loved her, a person with plans. The prosecution made that the central theme of their opening statement today. May had plans. Plans for Big Bear. Plans to divorce. Plans for a future that did not include Larry Millete. That future was never reached. Now let me tell you who Larry Millete is. Because understanding the specific arc of his life and his marriage is essential to understanding what the prosecution's theory of this case is, and why they believe the circumstantial evidence they have is sufficient to convict without a body. Larry Millete is 44 years old. He grew up in San Diego, moved with his family to Hawaii as a teenager, reportedly following some legal trouble. He enlisted in the United States Navy in 1999 and served until 2005 as an optician at Naval Medical Center, San Diego. He has no combat experience. He met Maya in Hawaii. They married young. They returned to California. They settled in Chula Vista. They built a life together. 3 children. A house in a neighborhood where people knew them. A marriage that, from the outside, looked like a marriage. From the inside, according to the investigation and the people closest to Maya, it looked like something else. Prosecutors said the marriage was unhealthy, toxic, that Larry was controlling and fixated on Maya's whereabouts, that when the marriage began to deteriorate, when Maya began to seek a way out, Larry Millete's response was not to accept the end of the marriage. It was to do everything in his power to prevent it, including things that no one in a healthy state of mind does. He paid spellcasters. That detail, the specific, documented, prosecutorially confirmed detail that Larry Millete paid people to cast spells on his wife, is the one element of this case that has made it memorable since it first emerged in preliminary hearings. And it deserves to be understood in its full context because it is more specific and more disturbing than the headline suggests. Larry did not pay one person to cast one spell. He paid multiple spellcasters over an extended period. And the spells he sought were not uniformly romantic or reconciliatory. Among the spells he requested were ones designed to make Maya love him again, but also spells designed to make Maya injured, spells designed to make her sick, spells designed to give her nightmares, either as punishment for wanting to leave or, and this is the specific detail that matters most, so that she would be dependent on him. Dependent on him. That is the specific logic of someone who cannot accept voluntary departure. If Maya was healthy and capable and wanted to leave, she could leave. But if she was sick, injured, suffering, if she was dependent, she would need him. She would have to stay. The spellcasters are not evidence of murder. They are evidence of psychology. Evidence of the specific state of mind of a man who was watching his marriage end and responding to that ending in ways that reveal how he thought about the people in his life, as objects to be controlled, as problems to be solved, as threats to be neutralized. And then he stopped requesting spells. The moment Maya disappeared, the moment she was gone, he stopped. Never requested another spell after January 7th, 2021. Prosecutors said in their opening today that this is significant. A man who had been paying spellcasters to injure his wife, to make her sick, to give her nightmares, stopped all of it the day she disappeared. Not because the marriage was saved, not because she had decided to stay, but because she was gone in a way that required no more intervention. Now let me tell you about January 7th and January 8th. Because these are the 2 days that sit at the center of the prosecution's case, and the specific sequence of documented events across those 2 days is the circumstantial foundation on which the entire prosecution is built. On January 7th, 2021, Maya Millete contacted a divorce attorney. This is the last day she was seen or heard from. Her cell phone activity terminated at 1:25 in the morning, at the house, not at a hotel, not at a friend's home. Not at any location that would be consistent with someone who had decided to voluntarily leave her family. At the house. At 1:25 a.m., surveillance camera footage shows something specific around this time. Larry Millete backing his black Lexus SUV into the driveway, pulling it out into the street, turning it around, leaving. About 40 minutes after Maya's phone went silent. He was gone for 12 hours. He told investigators he had been at Solana Beach all day with his son. Investigators testified they could not find any evidence confirming this. No receipts, no surveillance footage, no witnesses, no corroboration. A 12-hour absence on the day after his wife disappeared, with a phone that was off for nearly all of that time, that he claims was a beach trip, and that investigators cannot place him at. In the opening today, prosecutors described what the neighbors' surveillance cameras captured the night of January 7th. Loud bangs. Multiple loud bangs. The prosecution says these were gunshots. The defense will contest this interpretation, but the sounds are on the tape, and they were captured at the house where Maya Millete was last known to be alive. Now let me explain what a no-body murder case requires, because this is the specific legal challenge that the prosecution faces, and understanding it helps you understand why the trial is expected to last 3 months, and why the jury was specifically asked during selection whether they could convict based on circumstantial evidence. A no-body murder case, sometimes called a corpus delicti case, is a prosecution for murder when the body of the alleged victim has not been found. The Latin phrase corpus delicti means body of the crime, not literally the victim's body, but the evidence that a crime has occurred. To prosecute a murder without a body, prosecutors must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim is dead, that the death was the result of criminal action, and that the defendant is responsible. This is a high bar. Defense attorneys in no-body cases have a specific and powerful argument available to them. How do you know she is dead if you have not found her? Maya Millete could, in theory, have left voluntarily, could be alive somewhere, could have chosen to disappear. Larry Millete maintained this publicly after her disappearance, expressing hope that she would return, saying publicly that he loved her and wanted her home. But prosecutors said in their opening today that there is no evidence to suggest Maya is alive or that she voluntarily abandoned her family. No use of her ID, no use of her debit card, no contact with her children, no contact with her sister, who she was close to, no sightings, no communications. Nothing consistent with a person who left voluntarily. Everything consistent with a person who is not alive. The specific circumstantial evidence that the prosecution is relying on, beyond the spells and the cell phone tracking and the alibi that cannot be confirmed, includes several pieces that have been previewed in earlier hearings. 4 months after Maya's disappearance, a fire broke out in the backyard of the Millete home. A neighbor's surveillance camera captured it. Investigators who examined the fire's ashes found Maya Millete's burnt credit card. A credit card belonging to a woman who her husband insists left voluntarily, burned in her own backyard 4 months after she disappeared. Larry Millete owns guns. The court released images of his gun collection. The specific weapon that may have been used in Maya's killing has not been publicly confirmed, but the existence of the collection and the specific sounds captured on the neighbor's camera the night of January 7th are part of the prosecution's theory about how Maya died. And then there is Maya's own voice. A secret recording she made in 2021 of a conversation with Larry after he accused her of having an affair. In that recording, Maya asks him, "So that's enough for you to wish death on me all the time?" All the time. Maya Millete recorded her husband wishing death on her. That recording exists. The jury will hear it. And the specific question she asked, the specific acknowledgement, in her own words, that her husband wished her death on a regular basis, is the voice of a woman who knew something about her own marriage that we are only now beginning to fully understand through the evidence of a trial that began 5 years after she disappeared. The defense will argue that all of this is circumstantial, that there is no body, no confirmed cause of death, no direct evidence placing Larry Millete at a crime scene because no crime scene has been confirmed. They will argue that Maya could be alive, that her disappearance is unexplained but not necessarily explained by murder, that the jury cannot convict a man of murder beyond a reasonable doubt based on spells and a 12-hour beach trip and sounds on a neighbor's camera. The prosecution will argue back with the specific logic of circumstantial cases, that the totality of the evidence, the timeline, the behavior, the recordings, the ashes, the alibi that cannot be confirmed, adds up to a picture that has only one conclusion. That the man who paid Spellcasters to injure his wife, who tracked her car with a hidden phone, who drove 400 miles with his phone off the morning after she disappeared, who stopped requesting spells the moment she vanished, that man is responsible for her disappearance. And the jury's job, over the next 3 months, is to decide which picture they believe beyond a reasonable doubt. Maya Millete was 39 years old. She was miniature but fierce. She had a bold personality and was full of life. She had plans. Her children are now 10, 15, and 17 years old. They are in the care of their aunt. They have been growing up for 5 years without their mother. They are waiting, with the rest of Maya's family, for a verdict that will tell them what the law believes happened to her. The trial has begun. Opening statements were delivered today. The jury is seated. And over the next 3 months, in a Chula Vista courthouse with no cameras allowed inside, the prosecution will attempt to convince 12 people that the circumstantial evidence is sufficient to say, beyond a reasonable doubt, Larry Millete killed his wife. If you have any information about the disappearance of Maya Millete, contact the Chula Vista Police Department. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect. Drop a comment. Do you think the prosecution can prove murder without a body? We read every single comment. The trial has begun. Maya had plans. We will be back tomorrow. Let me go deeper into the specific legal challenge of a no-body case. Because the prosecution's task over the next 3 months is unlike any standard murder prosecution, and understanding how no-body cases work and how they have been won helps explain why the specific evidence in this case matters so much. The history of no-body murder prosecutions in the United States is longer than most people realize. The first recorded no-body murder conviction in American legal history dates to 1660 in England, in the case of John Perry, who was convicted and executed for the murder of his employer, William Harrison, who then reappeared alive 2 years later. That historical disaster is precisely why no-body murder cases face such intense legal skepticism for centuries. Courts were understandably reluctant to convict when the supposedly dead victim might simply be alive somewhere. Modern no-body cases operate within a framework that has evolved significantly from that historical caution. American courts have developed a substantial body of precedent holding that circumstantial evidence alone can establish corpus delicti, that a body is not legally required to prove that a death occurred and that the death was criminal. What is required is evidence strong enough to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. The landmark California case that established much of the modern framework for no-body prosecutions is People v. Scott, decided in 1959, in which the California Supreme Court held that the corpus delicti of murder may be established by circumstantial evidence alone. California, the state where Larry Millete is being tried, has a long and specific precedent supporting exactly the kind of prosecution that the San Diego County District Attorney is bringing. What makes a no-body case winnable? Prosecutors and legal analysts who have studied these cases identify several factors that consistently correlate with convictions. The first is the complete absence of any evidence that the victim is alive. Maya Millete has not used her ID, her bank accounts, her credit cards, or her cell phone since January 7, 2021. She has not contacted her children. She has not contacted her sister. She has not appeared in any database, any surveillance system, any public record for 5 years. A person who leaves voluntarily leaves traces. They use money. They communicate with someone. They exist in the world in ways that are detectable. Maya Millete has left none of those traces in 5 years. The second factor is behavioral evidence from the defendant. Larry Millete's behavior in the aftermath of Maya's disappearance is, as prosecuted cases go, unusually rich in behavioral indicators. He stopped requesting spells immediately. He did not participate in the searches that Maya's family and friends conducted for months after her disappearance. He drove hundreds of miles with his phone off on the morning after she was last seen. When Maya's family called 911 to report her missing, they told dispatchers, "They've been having fights on and off. My brother-in-law has a propensity to violence. She wouldn't just disappear." The family knew. They told the police from the first night. The third factor is physical evidence that is inconsistent with voluntary departure, but consistent with a crime. Maya's credit card, burnt in her own backyard 4 months after her disappearance, is exactly this kind of evidence. It is not evidence of murder directly. It is evidence that someone was destroying items connected to Maya, items that a person who left voluntarily would have taken with them, or that would have no reason to be burned if no crime had occurred. The burning of her credit card is the act of someone managing the evidence of her disappearance, not the act of someone with nothing to hide. Now let me explain the spellcaster evidence in more depth, because this is the element of the case that has captured the most public attention, and it is more forensically and legally significant than the headline version suggests. Prosecutors said in their opening today that among the spells Larry sought were ones designed to make Maya love him, but also spells designed to make her injured, sick, or suffer from nightmares, either as punishment or to make her dependent on him. This evidence comes from communications that investigators recovered, messages to spellcasters, records of payments, specific instructions about what Larry wanted the spells to accomplish. The legal significance of this evidence is that it is direct documentary evidence of Larry Millete's state of mind in the months before Maya disappeared. It shows a man who had concluded that the normal mechanisms of a relationship, communication, compromise, counseling, were insufficient to prevent his wife from leaving. It shows a man who was willing to cause harm to his wife, through injury, through illness, through nightmares, in order to maintain control over her. And it shows a man whose desire to control Maya extended to supernatural intervention when conventional means failed. Juries are not asked to believe in the efficacy of spells. They are asked to evaluate what the spells reveal about the person paying for them. A man who spends money on spells designed to make his wife sick, so she will be dependent on him, is a man who has a specific and documented relationship with the idea of controlling his wife through harm. The spells are evidence not of magic, but of psychology. And the psychology they reveal is the psychology of someone capable of taking the next step when the spells did not work. The next step being, in the prosecution's theory, murder. Let me also go deeper into the timeline evidence. Because the specific sequence of documented events across January 7th and 8th is the backbone of the prosecution's case, and each element of it contributes to the picture in a specific way. Maya's last phone activity was at 1:25 a.m. on January 7th at the house. This is not the phone activity of someone who was planning to leave. When people leave voluntarily, when they pack their things and get in a car and drive away from their marriage, they use their phones. They call someone. They text. They coordinate. They leave traces. Maya's phone went silent in the middle of the night at her home. It did not ping a cell tower in a direction consistent with departure. It went dark at 1:25 a.m. at the house. Approximately 40 minutes later, Larry Millete backed his Lexus SUV into the driveway, pulled out into the street, turned it around, left. The specific sequence of backing into the driveway rather than simply pulling forward out of the garage is a detail that the prosecution likely argued is significant. It is the loading behavior of someone who needed the trunk accessible from the driveway rather than from the garage. But the prosecution's interpretation of this specific detail has not been publicly confirmed in the opening statement reporting. He was gone for 12 hours. His phone was off for nearly all of that time. He drove 400 to 600 miles. He told investigators he was at the beach with his son. Investigators cannot confirm this. The prosecution's theory is straightforward. Larry Millete killed Maya in the house on the night of January 7th, loaded her body into the Lexus using the backed-in trunk, drove 400 to 600 miles with his phone off on January 8th, disposed of her body somewhere in that range, and returned home. The specific location where he disposed of Maya's body, if this theory is correct, has not been found in 5 years of investigation. The neighbor's camera captured loud bangs the night prosecutors believe Maya was killed. These sounds, described by the prosecution as consistent with gunshots, are on a recording that the jury will hear. The interpretation of those sounds will be contested by the defense, but the sounds exist on the timeline at the location from the night of January 7th. Now let me talk about what the defense is going to argue. Because for all the circumstantial evidence the prosecution has assembled, the defense has a fundamental and powerful argument that they will be making for 3 months. You do not have her body. You do not know what happened to her. You do not know if she is dead. And you cannot convict a man of murder beyond a reasonable doubt when you do not know if the person he allegedly killed is dead. This argument is legally available to the defense because the standard of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt. If the jury has even one genuine doubt about whether Maya Millete is alive, if they believe there is a real possibility that she chose to disappear, that she is somewhere living under a different name, that the absence of evidence of her life is not conclusive proof of her death, then they cannot convict. The defense also has an alternative suspect theory that the judge ruled they cannot fully present to the jury. Maya allegedly had an affair with a married co-worker at the Navy. The defense argued in pretrial motions that this co-worker also had motive to harm Maya, to prevent her from exposing his infidelity, which could have cost him his marriage and his job. The judge ruled that the defense cannot argue to the jury that the co-worker had any role in Maya's killing. But the existence of an alternative theory, however legally constrained, is itself useful to the defense in creating doubt. Larry Millete has pleaded not guilty. He has maintained his innocence throughout the 5 years of pretrial proceedings. He was present in the courtroom today, wearing a burgundy sweater vest over a white checkered collared shirt, watching the prosecution deliver its opening statement from a monitor in front of him. 3 months, 12 jurors, no body, no confirmed cause of death, all the circumstantial evidence of a man who would rather kill his wife than let her leave, and a recording of Maya Millete's voice asking her husband, "So that's enough for you to wish death on me all the time. All the time." The trial has begun. We will be covering every significant development. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect to stay with us through the next 3 months of testimony, evidence, and argument. Maya Millete was miniature but fierce, bold personality and full of life. She had plans. Her children are waiting. We will be back tomorrow.